Have you ever felt like Gwen Tennyson didn't just look different in Omniverse, but actually seemed different on a deeper level? Not just the art style, something about her presence, her energy, even her maturity felt reset. Now here's where it gets interesting. Gwen isn't fully human. She's part Anodite, a being made of pure mana energy, and we've been told her human body is basically a construct, a shell she chooses to wear. So if that's true, then why did that shell suddenly change right after she reached peak control of her powers in Ultimate Alien? You don't master your abilities and then randomly simplify. That doesn't feel like growth, it feels like adjustment. And in a universe where reality itself has been rewritten before, where cosmic beings can alter timelines without anyone noticing, a visual reset doesn't sound impossible, it sounds intentional. What if Gwen's mana became unstable? What if she was evolving too fast? Look closely at Omniverse Gwen. She feels more contained, more stabilized, almost like her energy has been compressed into a safer form. That's not just redesign territory, that's correction territory. And if it was a correction, then something must have gone wrong before. Something serious enough to require her to be recalibrated. So the real question isn't why she changed, it's who decided she needed to. Now let's anchor this in actual canon, because this isn't just vibes, the show gives us receipts. In Ben 10, Alien Force, when Gwen first unlocks her full Anodite form during the Hybrid arc, we learn from her grandmother Verdona that Anodites are beings of pure mana who don't even need physical bodies. They choose to create one. That means Gwen's human appearance is basically a constructed shell layered over energy. Then in Ben 10, Ultimate Alien, especially during fights like the one against Ultimate Kevin, we see Gwen absorb massive amounts of mana and push her Anodite form harder than ever before. Verdona even warns her that fully embracing her true form means letting go of her humanity. That line matters. Because if her body is a projection and she keeps overloading it with energy, what happens to the projection? Energy under pressure doesn't crack slowly, it recalibrates. Now jump to Ben 10, Omniverse. Gwen appears visually younger, more streamlined, almost simplified, right after seasons where she was operating at peak magical output. That doesn't look random when you connect the dots. It looks like stabilization. Like her mana signature reset her physical construct into a safer, more balanced template. Not weaker, controlled. And if the show already established that her form is adjustable and not biologically fixed, then a visible reset isn't breaking lore, it's following it. So the uncomfortable possibility is this. Omniverse Gwen might be the version of her after an unseen overload event, a quiet correction that happened between timelines, and we were never meant to notice it. Now let's bring in the Celestial Sapien angle, but calmly. In so long, and thanks for all the smoothies from Ben 10, Omniverse, the universe is completely erased and then restored by Alien X. That's not a small event. That's a full cosmic reset. And even if everything was brought back, the real question isn't whether it returned, it's whether it returned exactly the same. We know Celestial Sapiens debate every decision before acting, meaning changes can happen at a fundamental level without anyone realizing it. So instead of saying Gwen was directly targeted, consider something more subtle. If the universe was reconstructed, even tiny recalibrations could have been part of that process. Earlier we talked about her mana possibly destabilizing. What if, during the rebuild, that instability was smoothed out automatically? Not dramatically altered. Not rewritten into a new person. Just refined. Balanced. Stabilized. That would explain why her change feels noticeable but not extreme, different, yet still clearly Gwen. And if that's the case, then Omniverse Gwen might not be a replacement, or a downgrade. She might simply be the post-reset version of a universe that came back slightly adjusted. Not broken. Just corrected enough to prevent bigger problems later. Here's something most fans overlook. If Gwen's change was just random, why do other magic-linked characters also feel slightly recalibrated in Omniverse? Look at Charmcaster. Her design shifts too, but more importantly, her energy feels more defined, more contained. In earlier series, magic often looked wild, almost unstable, glowing constructs, heavy aura flares, raw mana bursts. But in Omniverse, magical energy across the board appears cleaner, sharper, more controlled. That's not just style, that's consistency. And consistency inside a universe usually signals a systemic change. Both Gwen and Charmcaster are deeply tied to Legerdemain, a dimension literally powered by mana. If there was any multiversal correction after the cosmic reset, magical beings would logically be the first to stabilize, because they operate on raw dimensional energy. So instead of asking why Gwen alone looks different, maybe we should ask why magic itself looks refined. What if the mana spectrum was subtly balanced after the universe was rebuilt? That wouldn't rewrite personalities or memories. It would just smooth out fluctuations. And if Gwen is part Anodite, a being made of that same energy, then she wouldn't escape that adjustment. She would reflect it. Which leads to a quieter but stronger conclusion. Maybe Omniverse didn't change Gwen randomly, maybe it balanced magic as a whole, and Gwen simply became the clearest example of that shift. Now let's zoom out even further, because there's another layer that makes this theory feel grounded instead of exaggerated: timeline instability. Throughout the franchise, characters like Professor Paradox constantly warn that timelines aren't as fixed as they seem. Small shifts ripple outward. And Gwen, being part Anodite, isn't just affected by time, she's connected to dimensional energy itself. In multiple arcs we see alternate timelines where Gwen's power level varies drastically, sometimes stronger, sometimes darker, sometimes fully embracing her Anodite identity. That alone proves her development isn't linear, it's conditional. So what if Omniverse exists on a slightly realigned timeline after the universal reset? Not a brand new reality, but one nudged into a safer trajectory. If earlier versions of Gwen were accelerating too quickly toward full Anodite transcendence, a subtle timeline correction could slow that curve without erasing who she is. That would explain why she still has her memories, her personality, her bonds, but feels slightly recalibrated in growth and presentation. It's not about replacing her. It's about course correction. And when you view Omniverse as a stabilized branch of a once fractured timeline, Gwen's change stops feeling cosmetic and starts feeling like the natural result of a universe that quietly adjusted its most unstable variables. So when you connect everything, the Anodite biology, the mana overload warnings, the universe literally being destroyed and restored, the subtle refinement of magic across the board, and the possibility of a stabilized timeline branch, the picture that forms isn't dramatic, it's controlled. Gwen didn't randomly change. She didn't get downgraded. And she wasn't replaced. The more unsettling possibility is that she was balanced. If her human form is a construct, it can be adjusted. If magic itself was refined after the reset, she would reflect that refinement. And if the timeline was nudged into a safer path, her growth curve would naturally shift with it. Omniverse Gwen might simply be the most stable version of her that this universe could sustain. Not weaker, safer. Not rewritten, recalibrated. And that leaves us with a quiet but powerful conclusion: the change wasn't chaos, it was maintenance. A universe that had just been rebuilt couldn't afford unstable variables, especially not one powered by pure mana. So maybe the real reason Gwen changed isn't because something went wrong, but because something made sure it wouldn't.